The final book I'm going to do in this first section is another fiction, and it's First Blood by David Morrell. I read First Blood when it first came out. I passed it on to Terry O'Neill to read, and he was just as enthusiastic about it as I was. There really wasn't anything about Vietnam, particularly portraying a Vietnam vet as a hero at that time. And with the hero being a special forces soldier, Green Beret, and it really describes elements of the training and the mindset of special forces, which wasn't really known at the time. Well, obviously well before the internet and things like that. So fast forward to more recent times, and I was presenting a course in Dayton, Ohio, firearms course, and David Morrell attended the course. The course was hosted by Dave Spalding, who is a renowned firearms instructor. At the time, he was the instructor for the sheriff's department there, and he put on this course for me to present, and together we went to the airport to pick David Morrell up and go back to the hotel. And in the car we just chatted about his flight and things like that, and various things, what we're going to be doing on the course and so on. And once we got back to the hotel and we went to Dave's room to have a cup of tea, he unpacked his suitcase, and out of his suitcase he gave us each a copy of First Blood. And he actually said to me, I don't know if you've heard of this book, but I wrote it. And I laughed and I said, it's one of my favourite books. He gave me a nice inscription in it. The book, which obviously was filmed, which we'll talk about, as I said, is probably the first of its type with a Vietnam veteran hero. But one of the interesting things was the contrast between the Rambo character, who was a Special Forces Vietnam vet, and his adversary, the local sheriff, who was a Korean War vet. And Rambo actually uses his knowledge of how a Korean War vet would conduct a search and so on to outwit him. And the book ends in absolutely cataclysmic violence. It's very well described, very, very well written, and David Morrell went on to write numerous other books, including some classics like The Brotherhood of the Rose. And one of his later books, I remember he described how operators from different eras dressed, what they wore, what kind of wristwatches they wore, and things like this, which were really interesting. David has trained with a lot of really prestigious instructors in the firearms field, at the edge weapon field, unarmed combat and so on. And he's picked up a lot of really good information. He puts it in the books very, very well. Regarding the film starring Sylvester Stallone, David gave us a bit of the inside story on it and so on. It was a really good film in my opinion. I enjoyed it a lot, and I think it was fairly truthful to the book. But as David mentions, the subsequent movies were pretty dire, and I have to agree with him, and he doesn't have a high regard for the ethics of Hollywood. This was the first of his career, and if you haven't read First Blood, you've really missed out on something. It's well worth a read.